Thank you for joining us again for another triple play today as we're working on improving our podcast step by step, day by day. So thank you. And if you like what you're seeing, make sure you subscribe and let us know. Put some comments below. We like those as well so we can stay in touch and get to know your thoughts, and we'll work anything you guys got that you think we should do into what we're doing. So with that being said, let's jump into today's podcast.
Yeah, lineup.
Yeah, that's
what
right.
We got in lineup today.
So today's big headlines. Let's start out with number one. And our first guy has been on our podcast several times now because he keeps having this drama going on. I've never seen anything quite like this, and it is Correa. So Correa now is possibly going to walk away from the Mets deal, from what I hear, and now is back. I guess there's a couple teams in talking for him. One of them is going back to possibly Milwaukee. So
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Same thing.
Yeah, north and along. Yeah, no. But Minnesota, he played from last year. He opted out. They did offer him a deal, and the deal that they offered him was a 10-year, I believe it was. 285 is what was out there reported. So 10-year, 285. Not 13, not 12. This thing keeps coming down. So do the Mets jump in and finish this deal, or does he go find somebody like a Minnesota? It's an interesting combination too, because simply put, and maybe you can give me your thoughts on this, Scott, but I mean, is it better to be a small fish, a big fish in a pond with a lot of other big fish, where you just kind of are not as well known, or is it better to be the big fish in a small pond? I mean, he goes to Minnesota. It's kind of like here in St. Louis, when you get 1 or 2 stars, this whole town loves you, and you're you can have if you're going to sign a 10-year deal, this is the kind of place. You go to Minnesota, they're going to love him. I think of like Joe Mauer. I think of the outfielder in the '80s your dad would have played against. I liked him a lot. Took him against the
Twins.
Yeah, Twins. Who was their outfielder? Kirby
Puckett.
Puckett. Yeah, I mean he was endured by.
Yeah.
By up there. Yeah, well, he was a good player, but like that's the kind of thing you build a legacy there, and that kind of town will love you.
Correa's that kind of player. I would imagine that's probably why he opted out so quick and tested free agency, and I think he liked being in Houston with other guys, other stars, being a part of something big. He probably felt a little isolated in Minnesota as far as star power, but I don't know him that well. I don't know Correa that well. I don't know if I imagine he likes the lights. He likes the attention. I mean, he proves it in the postseason. So, just something he needs to decide. Does he want to, like you said, be a big fish in a big pond, or a big fish in a little pond?
Yeah, I mean that's to me that's kind of the whole ordeal. So, all right, well let's visit our next one, and this is kind of a good story. Hamlin. He wakes up, and what a tremendous thing! And then the first thing out of his mouth is, "Did we win?" So and then as I was putting our notes together for today, I was going to bring up how the NFL was getting ready to have a vote, but the vote actually happened right before we started broadcasting, and so they're not playing the game that was canceled, and now apparently they're going to, depending on how things go. So here's what could happen: the Buffalo Bills in Cincinnati. I'm going to read this. This was a thing. So the AFC Championship game will be played at a neutral site if the participating team has played an unequal number of games, and both could have been the number 1 seed. And hosted the game had an AFC club played a full 17-game season. Those circumstances involve Buffalo or Cincinnati, and if Buffalo or Kansas City both win or tie this week, a Bills Chief AFC title game would be at a neutral site. If Buffalo and Kansas City both lose and Baltimore wins or ties, a Buffalo Chiefs AFC title game would be at a neutral site. If Buffalo and Kansas City both lose and Cincinnati wins, Bills or Bengals against Kansas City in an AFC title game would be at a neutral site.
So basically, they'll play games if they have to.
Well, it sounds like it's going to. No, it depends on what game they. Who, it
Tiebreakers.
depends on who wins. It
Right.
sounds like it's going to go to a neutral site. So if they're tied for the championship game,
I think they
So.
should have to play it no matter what,
I think so too.
especially in football.
Yeah, I mean they had the pause after 9/11 and they went back and rescheduled games.
Right.
I thought that was very interesting that they didn't come up with even like a Wednesday night game. Why not?
Well, the other teams that are going to be playing them in the playoffs, I would imagine, I mean, it's a touchy subject, right? You got the guy that's unconscious, died, resuscitated in the hospital. Like, don't know if, like, I get all that, but the teams that have to play this team, they're gonna be playing with healthier players. Like, those guys had to play an extra game if they don't have to play this game. The other
Yeah.
teams, so that's
That's
a whole however many minutes of potential injuries that are occurring to another team. That's an unfair advantage, especially in football.
Well-
I mean, think about how many guys get hurt every game,
Absolutely,
Like,
absolutely.
getting taken off the field like one major injury a game happens on a football field.
Well, one major injury can change the whole outcome, right? I mean, a quarterback goes down, top wide receiver goes down. That changes the whole dynamic of play.
I'd be interested to hear what the other teams have to say about that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Well, let's head into our third one, and it's kind of a new one that popped up last night, and that is that Michigan State and good Jim Harbaugh could be in trouble. Apparently, during COVID-19, the thought is that the reason why there may be suspensions, and that there's this investigation going on, is that they might have broken protocol with potential players coming and visiting the school and so on and so forth during the COVID-19 period. Jim Harbaugh was kind of outspoken a little bit on that during that period of time too. So this may be a little bit backlash from that, but more than anything, I mean, what does this do? Regardless of the suspension, what I'm wondering now is Jim. It's been rumored for some time that this guy could possibly jump ship and head over to the NFL again. He's been in the NFL. He coached the 49ers at one point, if I remember right. Was it 49ers or Baltimore?
Jim Harbaugh? Yeah.
Yeah, because
The
it's
49ers.
I always get it confused because his brother
Mm-hmm.
coached the other one. But yeah, so he coached and had success, went to the Super Bowl, and then he kind of leaves and goes back to college because for head coaches, it seems like there's more money in it for colleges, certainly more prestige to some degree. So he goes back to Michigan and has been happy. But does this make him? A lot of people have suspected because they've been a good program. He's really got nothing more to prove on the college level. Does this push him back? Before he gets suspended, does he just leave the school and jump into the NFL? Certainly going to find a team right away.
I think I think it solely depends on, does he want to coach in the NFL? If the answer is yes, I don't think this has any bearing on it. If it's maybe he doesn't want to coach in the NFL and he's looking at a level 1 allegation where all this stuff's going to be coming in, and he might say, hey, I might, give it a try.
Yeah.
But level 2 is, just to clarify,
Yeah.
he was meeting with recruits during a dead period in COVID-19.
Yes.
And was that originally a dead period, or COVID-19 made that a dead period?
It was made by COVID-19, but all the schools had to do it. And the thing is that's that they did not follow
Watching
that.
player workouts on a video feed. That's one of the allegations.
Yep.
That's what they're talking about.
Trust me,
That's
I
what
mean-
they have time to do. And that
I agree. I mean, if I'm sitting at home not doing anything, I'm going to be looking at what's going to make my team better. YouTube's a hop and a skip away.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do it? But I mean, the truth is rules are rules. We talked about that the other day in our previous
yeah,
broadcast.
but stupid rules are stupid rules.
Well, I agree on that, but it is a rule, and everybody else had to abide by it, whether it was stupid or
You
not.
think they did?
Well,
or you
that's
think they
the
just
question.
didn't get caught?
Well, that's
And
a
their
good
coach
question.
didn't speak out against a stupid rule earlier.
No, well,
So they didn't have their eyes on them.
Yeah, I'm not against. I am a fan of Jim Harbaugh. I have not honestly. When I looked at those allegations, I personally didn't see anything in there to me that said, "Wow, this is rocket moving. This is a terrible program." It's not like a lot of the NCAA allegations where you got money being involved,
Right.
booster clubs.
He's been doing this for how long? How long has he been coaching? And
Long
this
time.
is what you're bringing up to smear him?
Right.
Like, seriously?
Well,
You can't handle this behind closed doors and pay a fine or...
Well, they obviously are trying to set an example with
Yeah.
them, and the college level, not to go down down there, but they were much and continue to be much more strict on the COVID policies that are out there than other areas like in work and military and all. And so it's kind of a touchy subject because depending on where you fall on the fault line of the COVID shutdowns and what side you kind of chose. Will depend on really on how you see probably most of these allegations. For those who were hardliners on during that time period, they're going to be much more, hey, he deserves a fine. He should have done better. He should have protected his players. Others, and not really protecting them in the sense of, he just should have followed the rules in that period of time. But the other side's going to say, and that's probably where you and I fall on. Well, that was kind of a weird period. I mean, this is not anything crazy to be watching recruit videos and to not be sitting around just waiting and waiting and waiting.
The statutes of limitations on these violations should have ended the day after they took away the COVID protocols.
Yeah,
they should have never looked at any of this ever again.
Well,
they should have burned it, thrown it in the shredder.
It moved on.
Forgot about it.
Well, that's that. Well, that's our thoughts on that. Now let's get into something that's I think is going to be a little fun for us, which is, and again, three things. 3 pitching staffs. Okay, American League is got some really good teams this season. There's 3 pitching staffs, a little different each one. Some are more established than others. Some are going to go through a little change, but they all still look really, really good. But I want to start with the first one because it's hard to ignore the Texas Rangers. Right now, the Texas Rangers have gone out. They got the big free agent pitcher Jacob deGrom. Then they already had Martin Perez, who was their leader. Last year they signed John Gray. They traded for Jake Odorizzi, and then they signed this offseason Andrew Heaney. Did I say that right?
Andrew Heaney.
There you go. Thank you. I knew you'd correct me on that. And so, let's talk about this pitching staff because, in my opinion, this has got to be one of the top pitching staffs in all of baseball right now. When I look at this, I mean, Jacob deGrom, last year 11 starts, 5-4. When he's on, he is on. He is the best pitcher currently in baseball, in my opinion, when he is on. Martin Perez, I mean, 32 starts, 12-8, 2.89 ERA. Tough league they're in. I mean, it's not like they played a bunch of bottom league teams. John Gray, we already know his resume. That's why they went out and spent the big money last season. Nathan Eovaldi is kind of an interesting one, taking that from the Red Sox. He kind of had an off year last year, but I mean, the Red Sox were very injured. Definitely lacked in probably run support if I had to look. But
I was a little injured too, wasn't he?
Yeah,
he's always a little bit injured.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that almost every season he's out for about a month, it seems like. But he's a guy when the playoffs come. It kind of reminds me of like Chris Carpenter or who is the guy with the Giants who's now with Arizona, the big pitcher.
Lefty? Mm-hmm. You don't remember his name. This is fascinating to me.
I'm having a hard time remembering off the top of my head.
Go throw it in the ocean. Remember the Dodgers players?
Oh, I know.
Throw it in the ocean. I don't think I can tell you his name because I want you to.
I'm trying hard to remember because
his last name starts with a B.
Baumgartner.
There you go.
Thank you. Yes, I could see his face, and it was funny because I really wanted the Cardinals last year to make a trade for him during the mid-season because it seemed like that Arizona might be one to entertain that. He's not on his top side anymore, but
no, he's not. He's a good 4, good 5, eat up innings.
Yeah.
Good team leader.
But like Eovaldi, he's a guy that when the playoffs come, he steps up and bam, and that's why I said, not a bad guy for your number 4. And when you're looking at a guy who is a playoff hero, being your number 4 pitcher, and then after that, you still got Odorizzi at number 6, and he's just a couple of years removed from being a good playoff hero for the Astros. Yeah. So again, I mean, we're talking a great lineup. I mean, 6 pitchers, 5 slots, and every one of those is really, for most teams, probably somewhere between a 1 and 3 pitcher. So, and so I have to think the Rangers, especially after last year getting the superstars they did up the center of the field.
Got a new manager.
Yeah. I mean, they're looking to be a good team this year. I've liked, and they've got young players coming up through the ranks. I mean, they were bad for several years, and so they brought in some young players, and so they just seem to be a team that I told a lot of people last year to watch out for the Rangers. I think that they're going to surprise people. They could even make a big push to the playoffs. They didn't surprise people as much as I thought they would, but I think that they caught a lot of people's attention. And in this offseason, going out again and picking up the best pitcher in maybe all of baseball right now in DeGrom. I mean, that seems to be that move that put him over the edge. And at the trade deadline last year, picking up Odozi. I mean, that was another, just even if it didn't help him last year, he's a piece that's going to help him for the next year or so. And they can, hopefully win. It seems like people who who go to Texas often stay in Texas, kind of like St. Louis. So maybe they have a good chance of keeping him when he does become a free agent.
Yeah.
All right, our next team.
That's a good staff.
What's that?
That's a good staff.
Yeah. Well, let's go on to our next team. Our next team that we got to compare, though, and then we're going to talk about who you think is the best of these three.
Yeah.
Yankees. We have Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon, Nestor Cortez, Luis Severino. I never can say his name right. Help me out.
Severino.
Thank you. Frankie Montas and Domingo German. Okay, again, this is most of the staff is really returning from last year. They got Rodon, and that was their big pickup. He was a number 2. But when I look at Garrett Cole, Rodon, I just look at this lineup. I mean, Frankie Montas, for a lot of, the Cardinals were looking at him to be their number 1, and now he's their number 4 or 5 guy.
Yeah, he was always the number 4 guy. Even when he was with Oakland, he was with I think he was mostly with Oakland for a while.
Did you ever face him?
I faced him a lot of times. Throws 100 miles an hour, but there's something about it that makes it feel like it's like 92, 94.
Really?
Yeah, I don't. He's not uncomfortable at bat. You feel comfortable the whole time. So I think he had. I would imagine his ERA was better in the minor leagues, but I don't think he's going to be much better than a 3.5, 4.5 guy.
Okay.
His whole career.
Okay. Well,
I should see him well.
And I know you faced Garrett Cole. What do you think of Garrett Cole?
Garrett Cole is. I got him second to Severino. When Severino is pitching, his stuff is better than Garrett Cole's.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And Rodon, did you face him at all?
Domingo? No.
Carlos.
Oh, Carlos Rodon. Yes, I have faced him. When he was with the Angels, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about did you face,
Just your average, like good fastball, heavy fastball, gets on you quick, got late movement, consistent,
Okay.
not that comfortable.
Okay. Yeah, he when we're talking about the Yankees staff, and, you just said that their number 4 guy is probably their number 1 guy, in your opinion, and he's their number 4 guy.
Stuff-wise. I don't know what goes on in his head, but
yeah.
like if you could put in a Hall of Fame mindset to his stuff, it'd be stupid.
You see that sometimes where a pitcher has the stuff and they just need to get the mindset. Sometimes the change of scenery does that. We've seen that again. We were talking the last broadcast, but Montgomery, he was a good, solid pitcher for the Yankees. Comes to the Cardinals, and I'm talking about him being maybe number 2, and I've seen some articles that say he could wind up being the number 1 guy. He has the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Can he get the headset? Can he do the mix it in? And
I also think, I don't know if this is true, but I think lefties probably don't fare as well in the National League. And I can't say why that is. That's just a thought I had.
Yeah, we'll have to look that up. We'll maybe do some research on that and talk about it sometime.
I just think if Nestor Cortez is pitching in the NL West, instead of having a 2.45 where he probably has a 3.
Okay.
Low 3. I don't know. Like I said, I'm totally making this up off the cuff.
Do you bat differently against lefties than righties when you're up there against some of these guys? Or do you just keep the same approach?
I think that the National League has been doing what the American League is doing now because of the DH.
Yeah.
They had to do matchups for so much longer that the teams got into a good rhythm of knowing when to substitute, when to pull guys, when to start guys. And I think American League has some catching up to do as far as matchups go.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, let's get to our next team, and it's another one that I think is fun. I actually like this team because growing up, I was actually not not in love with them in the fact of, the Cardinals are my team, but I enjoyed watching them, especially when they had the Killer Bees at one point. So now Houston is an American League team. They've been doing really, really well. They've got it. They lost Verlander,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, this is a team that still has
Luis Garcia.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at and Luis Garcia is number 4.
Right.
Number 4. Look at those. Tell me what you think of each of these
Well,
guys.
yeah, spring training will shake that out a little bit, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, they still got Javier, they got Valdez, they got McCullers. You just said
Fuller's is
Garcia.
good. If
Yeah.
he's healthy.
Yeah, Brown is when Brown is your number 6 guy, and the guy, last year in his few starts, he's a young guy, throws less than a 1.
Mm-hmm.
They have their number 5 guy listed right now. Had 28 starts, 13-8 with a 3.94 ERA. So, and Jose. So I don't know. If Verlander. This is one of those things where sometimes it's interesting when a team loses somebody like that. It actually can be an addition, in my opinion, sometimes because they rely on the old guy who's been steady Eddie. And, Verlander's still good, but he's older, and you never know. He's always going to be year to year.
Mm-hmm.
He's always one injury away, in my opinion, that when you start getting to 38, 39, 40 years old as a pitcher, you're always just one injury away to never really recovering. And these young guys I'm looking at on here, I mean, a lot of these guys have good stuff. They're still putting their heads together.
Yeah.
But
Houston does a really good job of developing pitchers.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. The tech they use, the coaching staff that they have, probably a combination of both. But they always have pitchers that know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, again, just a really, really strong staff. So, of these 3 staffs, if you're, in your opinion, the Rangers, the Yankees, and the Houston Astros, you could choose one of those pitching staffs. Which one do you go with in 2023?
Probably the Rangers. I think the Rangers, yeah. Plus, you got to think about the defense that the Rangers have.
Well, I was just thinking pitching. I mean,
I know,
you
but
start
I'm
adding
saying,
on
I know, but
defense.
this is going to help their pitching, right?
Sure, they're going to have good
great
defense.
Shortstop, great third baseman, great second baseman. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's the difference of a couple wins with the Cardinals, right? You look at a pitcher that comes to the Cardinals, if they're a ground ball pitcher,
Yeah.
and the ballparks help out. I mean, you look at Texas, from what the newer ballpark, from what I've understood is a pretty pitcher-friendly ballpark. It's not necessarily a real hitter-friendly ballpark. It's more towards the neutral.
Yeah, Rangers it's a pretty big stadium.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big stadium. The wind blows out a lot there, but I just think that this year is going to be the Wild West for pitching. I think that you're going to see guys have numbers that you're shocked at, and guys that you think, they didn't. Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Based on the shift. What I'm thinking of is Andrew Heaney, who's a lefty, had a 3.31 last year.
Okay.
With the shift, now he's going to be facing mostly heavy right-handed dominant lineups with no shift. So his little cutter, his little slider that comes down and in, where he gets guys to roll over. I mean, you can't compute how many more hits they're going to be, and then those hits turn into runs.
Can you think of some of the players that are going to have a real good year because of that? I've been thinking about that. One of them sits right behind me. We were talking about it just earlier, but Matt Carpenter. I think Matt Carpenter, he was, when the shift happened, it really...
Just think of a pull lefty.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that pulls. I mean, if I was playing when they couldn't shift, I don't know what I would hit. I can't tell me any times I got out down the line because the third baseman could play down the line because the shortstop was shipped over because the second baseman was shipped over. I mean, it's going to be astonishing, some of the numbers. I mean, I think I read a couple days ago that in 2000 there were like 300 hitters. And then this past year, I think there were 7 qualifying.
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to see a reverse of that again. I think there's going to be 20 to 30 guys that are hitting 300. I think guys like Andrew Heaney are going to have Martin Perez, like lefties that like to come in, are going to have their numbers are going to be higher. And I don't think people are anticipating, and maybe they are. But I'm just thinking, I like the Rangers, but they got 2 lefties that.
Yeah.
Who knows what happens because they didn't come up before the shift. They didn't, they always pitched with the shift.
Yeah, that is a great point. That it's going to make this season, and I like the fact that we may see some more 300 hitters because
bigger bases, all of it. It's going to be more offense.
Yeah,
pitchers are going to be. You're going to hear a lot of pitchers complain. I guarantee you.
And on top of that, they took away the ability to put a little bit of that grease on there to hold those balls. Yeah. I've listened to several pitchers. One I liked a lot, obviously, is Wainwright. Being at the end of his career, he's not afraid to speak the truth. He was talking a while back about, we all were using something because we want to grip it because we don't want to hit players.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah, well, but he says that
helps.
Well, it helps, but he said that it had more to do with the outside of the ball covers have gotten a little bit more slippier.
I understand what he's saying.
Yeah,
I understand what he's saying, but the rules is you can't alter the ball.
Yeah, well, that came down last year in the middle of the season on it.
Okay, so all these pitchers that saying it helps with grip, that's absolutely true. But if you're throwing 98 and you have no idea where it is going because you're throwing 100%, with Stickum, it helps keep that 100% throw and you can control it better. But what if you don't have Stickum, maybe you're not going to throw it 98. Maybe you're going to throw it 95 and have a little bit more control. That's what they're really saying. I can't throw this ball as hard as I want, where I want, unless I put something on it. Well, if nobody put anything on it, everybody would back off a little bit so they would control the ball better. You still can control the ball. They just are complaining they're not able to.
Yeah. I'm wondering.
They want every time.
I wonder if we can go back on another episode and talk about this a little more because I'm thinking it'd be very interesting to see how the first half of last year versus the second half on that because they really cracked down about right before the All-Star break, and so how were pitchers performing beforehand before they got cracked down on, and they basically started really watching all that. I don't know. It'd be very interesting to see because the whole league and all the umps really started taking a hard line on that the second half of last year. So I'd be curious to see what the numbers were like before and after. Obviously, they'll say weather too, but I would say, hey, I mean, it was warm before, warm after. You got a little cold weather at the beginning, a little cold, at the end. But I mean, that's part of baseball, right? So, yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit. Hold on here. Let me put this up there because we're going to get into the faith and culture part. All right. So unless you've been underneath a rock the last 3 or 4 days, what's been going on in politics, which is going to be part of the culture. Okay. And I want to start with we have this gridlock going on in the House of Representatives, right? Mm-hmm. So we got McCarthy has 202, 201 votes. There's been a few times where he has 201, a few times 202. I'm not sure which one is flipped a few times, but when I've watched, it's been somewhere in there. And then we got these two thought patterns that seem to be out there, and I'm going to call it the Matt Gaetz versus the Chip Roy. They're all on the same side. You got about 20 of them not voting for him. Mm-hmm. All right. And Gaetz is like never McCarthy because he's been in politics 14 years. He's had leadership positions. He's owned by people. It goes back to one of my theories is I think we should have term limits, which is actually one of their proposals. They want term limits, and in that way they're not owned, the whole time. Right. And then you got the other side, which is kind of the Chip Roy, which is, hey, I'm okay if McCarthy wins. What I'm saying is I'm not going to vote for him unless he gives us some more concessions, such as, and he has this list of demands that he has put out there, and most of them are, in my opinion, are pretty reasonable for conservative values. Some of the things that have been discussed, just like I was saying, are they'd love to put up to a vote the border crisis and term limits. There's been a few other things that I've heard Chip and a few of the others mention that they like. And in the middle of it, one of my favorite clips the last few days on social media was Byron Donalds from Florida. Mm-hmm. Did you see that clip?
Maybe.
So he was, they put his name down for Speaker of the House, and they were interviewing him. They're like, well, he goes, I know I wasn't going to be Speaker. And they're like, yeah, but you voted for yourself. He goes, well, yeah, that's kind of cool, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. I mean, if they're going to nominate you and you're going to get 20 votes or 19 votes, let me make it 20.
Seriously.
Yeah. So anyway,
I don't. maybe I don't understand the big deal about the Speaker of the House, other than he's third in line to be president.
Well,
That's a big deal.
that is a big deal. I think the other thing is they're the ones that kind of help present the bills, and they kind of the funnel for things. And then they're also the ones that give the hard line no
Yeah.
to the Democrats.
So you need someone that has influence.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously he has. He's got 201 votes, 202 votes. You know, I kind of get both sides of this though. So let me give the con side. Okay, Republicans for so long have been do nothing for over 20 years. Okay, you have to really go back to the last strong speaker, which would have been during the 80s through the 90s. Okay, to find really the conservative movement being pushed forward.
Mhm.
Okay, now these guys that are coming up, these young guys, and I look at Matt as being part of that young crowd,
Mhm.
and you look at a lot of these younger Congress people, okay, and then it goes to the other side too. They're not wanting to play the game anymore. They've seen what's going on for 20 years, and they want to go back to simple conservative values. They're tired. Their view is for the last 30 years, you guys have given and you've given, and every time the Democrats say, "Hey, this is the line. We want to go to that line," then the line shifts. And all of a sudden you gave half, and now you're giving another half, and all of a sudden you've given 8/10 of the field
Right.
away
Right.
because every time you keep pushing half and half and half and half, and they're going, no, we've got to have people who are going to push back, and so I would actually fall in that category as a conservative, that I'm ready to see more of a strong push, especially against the cultural powers. So. And I had this conversation this morning with another guy. Like, I would like the president. I don't know, why do they invite media that they call fake media into the press conference? The next Republican president, I personally would not invite CNN or MSNBC into my room. And if they say,
you
well,
can invite them.
I would.
You don't have to call on them.
I wouldn't invite them though.
You
Why?
can still invite them to the
Invite
party.
other groups that are more real press. Make them complain. If they can't be there, what are they going to complain about? They'll just have to go, well, we weren't there.
Well, they'll complain about not being there.
Exactly. And that's all they can do. They did that with Ron DeSantis.
Or just if they ask us a question, you say no. Or
Well, Trump did that, though. He
yeah,
did. Not you.
I think you still gotta invite them.
I don't.
Do you want to be invited to their party?
No.
You don't want to be able to ask questions?
No. I not with CNN or MSNBC as a conservative, until their ownership changes, they're not going to change. The quality of question you're going to get will always have the undercurrent against you. So why would you even entertain that? They're not neutral news. And quite honestly, you look at their broadcast, I'll tell you what I would do. I would invite Joe Rogan. I would say, Joe, you bring somebody in here. Because Joe Rogan has 10 times the viewership than they do.
Mhm.
Any given show. Probably all their shows combined.
Yeah.
His average, show is 12
Have
to
a
15 million.
correspondent there.
Yeah. Yeah, I would invite people like that who have larger audiences, just don't have the name recognition around the globe like those guys sometimes do. Same thing with the New York Times. I wouldn't invite the New York Times. Why would you entertain a paper that hates you? All they're going to ever do is they're never going to give you a piece of good news. They're there not to report the news. They're there to tear you apart in your administration. Why would you invite? That's not the news. Make them write. They can still write what they want. That's not going to change anything. And if they want to complain about not being there, well, so be it. But at least you don't look like a fool ignoring their questions or having them do some of the things that they did during that Trump administration. I think now that we know their game, and I look at Ron DeSantis, he does that. You don't really see a whole lot of the other presses in there. And the more I've watched him, the more I've been like, yeah, that seems to be the way to go.
Why isn't there a score for news organizations based on the amount of reported stories that have been proven false? So let's say Fox News does 1,000 reports through the year, and they have to retract 20 of them. That's a 98% score, or whatever, 99.8. What about CNN and give them a score of 85?
Well, I think that the score is the viewership, right? And so I think that the viewership, and truth is always seems to be in part of, I will talk to my hardcore left friends, and it seems like their view of truth, they'll come up with stuff, and I'm like, that's not truth. But in their mind, well, they'll back it up. But we've seen the circles, the circle truth, where it's exposed, but they don't seem to acknowledge it. They'll go, well, Google says this.
Well, they
And
don't.
Google will say, well, the Times says that. And Times
Yeah.
will say, well, CNN said that. And CNN will say, well, Google said that. And it just goes back into the same, that's how that whole
Yeah.
Russian espionage type stuff with Trump started out. And the more you went down that rabbit hole, the more you found out there was just one big circle going around in CNET. But I think there's a broader thing to be learned from this. And when I was thinking about this, I'm going to be honest with you, I kept thinking in terms of being a conservative, in terms of the Republican Party. I just finished in my daily reading in the morning the Book of Judges,
Mm-hmm.
and as you read it in the final chapters, so in Judges 19 through 21, you're getting to the final thing of the judges,
Mm-hmm.
right? So and you have this tribe who's basically gone so far into sin that they literally take somebody's wife and concubine and do horrific things.
Mm-hmm.
The guy takes his dead concubine and he cuts her up and sends a piece of her to each of the 12 tribes.
Bravehearts.
What's that?
The Braveheart movie. The Bravehearts, right?
Yeah, well,
Strung and quartered.
Yeah, he was.
Quartered her.
He was before Braveheart.
Yeah.
So he literally cuts
Yeah.
up this woman, sends it. Then the other 11 tribes come and say, "What has been done?
Right.
What is going on?" And he says, the sin was done. I didn't want to stay in the Gentile area, so I fast forward my journey to this town that was underneath the tribe of Benjamin, and look what they did. They wanted to kill me,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, well, we can't handle it. We're not going to be able to have this. So they all get together. They go to war against the tribe of Benjamin, and they wipe out those responsible and all the major leaders and older men.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the other part. There's compassion. They don't just wipe out the tribe of Benjamin. They want the tribe of Benjamin. They understand the importance of the 12 tribes represented. I mean, this has been years since the original brothers, so
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to. I mean, it's like your cousin's cousin's cousin by this point, right? So,
Right.
But they have this compassion, and they basically through a series of things, they come to this point where they go, hey, here's some wives for your young men, and this is how this is going to be. So they get wives. And the Republican Party reminds me of that a little bit because you got it seems like there's more and more collectively good people coming together to some degree, especially these younger guys that seem to have a better aspect of truth and a better aspect of the importance of conservative values
Mhm.
overall. But the other thing I'm finding is on the side of that is you still got segments of this old school, and they're going further and further down this road where you can't even tell if they're conservative anymore. I mean, we just voted out Kinzinger. Well, he got redistricted, but he's out. Okay,
Yeah.
he didn't.
Well, this last vote they got put up.
Yeah.
1.7 trillion?
Yeah, but what I was talking about is some of the people that got voted out. What's the other? You had Cheney get voted out, Liz Cheney.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like people are starting to wake up, but I mean, those people, when you look at a Liz Cheney or an Adam Kinzinger, or a Mitt Romney, what is the difference between them and a Democrat? Their policies and a Democrat, and there isn't.
I mean,
any.
there's got to be some.
No.
None?
None. That I can. When I looked at their policies,
Yeah.
That's why Liz Cheney became part of the January 6th committee
Right.
and joined in. As her own party said, please don't. That's why they stripped her of all of her committee meetings. Same thing with Kissinger. These are people who joined the other side. Okay, they were never truly Republican, and that's why I said I think you're starting to see a separation of like the sheep and the wolves.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, you saw, and so when I will look at this battle with McCarthy, I keep wondering, part of me doesn't like that's going on because we need to get a House Speaker, we need to get on to bigger things. But sometimes you got to clean your own house.
It's actually kind of nice that they're not doing anything right now.
Well,
they're probably screwing up less because they're doing this, right?
that is definitely
Just-
true.
Keep voting as long as you want, guys.
Yeah, that is true. And when you look at this, I want to end kind of our broadcast with this thought, because the book of Judges is very interesting. When it leaves Judges 21:25. The verse says, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everybody did what was right in his own eyes." There were no kings in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Judges 21:25. And when I think about that, and I think about where the culture is right now where we are today, I don't think we're too far from that, you know. And eventually, I'm going through the book of Ruth right now. Eventually, I'll go into First Samuel, and in First Samuel, we're going to get a king, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what does God tell them? They, you know, here they are without a king. They have God leading them, and the first thing they're going to go for is we want a king, and He's going to warn them. He's going to be like, hey, you'll have a ruler. You'll look like all the other nations, and it won't be me. And guess what? He's going to press his thumb. Your sons will work for him. They'll go to war for him. Your daughters, he'll take them in, and he won't be, you know.
Yeah.
And so
You're going to be led by a man, just like the whole world. Look at the whole world.
yeah, well, and not only that, but you know, with power always seems to come corruption. You know, like you know,
Yeah.
power, fame, money always seems to. It's very tough for most men to get those things, and most people to get those
Yeah.
things.
In the book of Kings, there's not that many kings that God wrote and Jeremiah, and did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. There's
Yep.
only a few.
Absolutely.
Everybody else screwed the pooch.
Well, with that, we want to thank you for your time today and for listening. Again, if you're liking what we're doing as we continue to do this, please subscribe and save. It helps us and get the word out. The more we get out, the more we'll be able to keep putting this
The more you
out.
support us, the more we can keep building this thing we got.
Exactly.
Little step by step.
God's providing it. We're just going to chill with it. So,
Get some good guests on here.
all right. Well, with
Outro. Gotta give my. All right, I gotta go for real. I gotta be over there. You're safe.